7, I'm Suzanne Malveaux. It's Monday, March 14th, midnight Tuesday in Japan. I want to get you up to speed on the aftermath of the earthquake and the tsunami that rocked Japan. The official death toll is more than 1,800, but thousands more are missing, and that number will go up as those searching reach more hard-hit areas. In the middle of the destruction, we are hearing amazing stories of survival. One man pulled from the rubble explains what kept him going.
I thought I was dying when I was pushed in the water. For my folks, for my family, I decided to make every effort to survive.
But grim news from an area on Japan's east coast. Crews have found about 2,000 bodies in Miyagi region. That is according to the Kyoto news agency. Now, if confirmed, this would be the largest discovery of bodies from the earthquake and tsunami. Well, people in Japan also dealing with fears of a nuclear disaster. A second explosion shook a damaged nuclear power plant today. A Japanese cabinet secretary says 11 people were hurt, but no massive radiation leakage was detected. Still, many people are worried.
I don't understand the technical side of it all, but I'm scared because I can see the radiation.
Tests found low levels of radioactive contamination on 17 crew members from a U.S. Navy helicopter. They had returned to the USS Ronald Reagan from disaster relief missions in Japan. Well, the Navy says tests did not detect any contamination after they washed with soap and water. The problems at Japan's nuclear plants will mean rolling blackouts affecting as many as 45 million people. Electricity is going to be turned off from 3 to 6 hours in some areas. The blackouts will not include downtown Tokyo. The rolling outages will last until April 8th. Survivors are also coping with food and water shortages. Many are waiting in long lines outside the grocery stores. One young mother, she expressed some relief after finding infant formula.
I was really worried that my baby would get dehydrated. I'm relieved that finally I could buy formula. I will prepare it right away.
Now, we just heard from President Obama live just moments ago, promising U.S. help for the people of Japan. Take a listen.
I've said directly to the Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Kan, that the United States will continue to offer any assistance we can as Japan recovers from multiple disasters. And we will stand with the people of Japan in the difficult days ahead.
More now on that second explosion at one of Japan's crippled nuclear plants. Japanese officials say the blast did not damage the reactor, but they are scrambling to prevent a total meltdown. Our CNN's Stan Grant, he is tracking the developments for us, and he's joining us live from Tokyo. Stan, tell us, what does this mean about this second explosion?
Yeah, second explosion in the number 3 reactor, Suzanne. This is exactly the same sort of explosion that took place in the first reactor just the other day. What happens here is as they release steam from the reactor to relieve some of the pressure, that the water particles disintegrate and they disperse into hydrogen and oxygen. And of course, that's a combustible mix. So it was a hydrogen explosion that affected the outer wall of the building, blasting a hole in that outer wall of the building and also some of the roof. At the same time, it injured 11 people and then knocked out the coolant in this number 2 reactor. So now we have 3 separate reactors all battling these cooling problems. They've been flooding them with seawater to try to bring it under control, but even that then was disrupted when human error meant that the fuel pump stopped working. There was not enough fuel in it, and the water stopped pumping. They fixed that, the water was in there, but now the officials are saying that they cannot rule out the possibility of a partial meltdown in the number 2 reactor. 3 reactors now suffering problems. They're all stricken, and they can't rule out a meltdown in all 3 of them. That's a situation they're facing right now.
Stan, that sounds rather alarming. What does that mean in terms of radiation levels around the plant? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, this is critical. Whenever you release some of the pent-up steam, you also release some radiation. Now, they've been measuring that in recent days, and they say that those levels have actually fallen back and they are not at a level that is going to cause harm to people. At the same time, they've imposed this 12 or 13 mile evacuation area, a no-go area. 200,000 people have been moved from their homes. About 160 people have come into contact with radiation to various degrees, and they're being treated. You also mentioned off the top there the USS Ronald Reagan, that carrier group about 100 kilometres, 60 miles northwest of the plant. They also came in contact with radiation. A number of crew members there affected, and they, again, though at low levels, and they've had to change their course. So you hear words like contamination, you hear words like radiation, you hear words like meltdown, and while the government is stressing that they believe all the safety procedures will hold, it won't escalate into a greater problem, and the levels are low, it does create uncertainty, Suzanne.
And Stan, real quick question here. You're in the area, you've talked to folks there. Do they believe what government officials are telling them, that this is, that things are going to be okay here, or do they believe that perhaps they're not telling the full story, trying to save face?
I think people are aware that the government is keeping the information flowing. They're aware that you need to set up these precautions. The people who've been moved from their homes have seen that the government is taking a safety-first approach. If you listen to what the government is saying, they are saying that they are preparing or anticipating the worst situation. They're preparing for that contingency, but they're planning for the best outcome. And that outcome is that the containment facilities, the various layers of containment within the reactor hold, and even if there is a disintegration of the fuel rod, even if the core of the reactor starts to melt down, that is contained within the building. That's what people are hoping, and they're the assurances they're getting from the government, Suzanne.
Okay, we certainly hope that that's what pans out there. Stan Grant, thank you very much, Stan. Well, obviously, this is your chance to talk back about the disaster in Japan, its possible impact on the nuclear industry here in the United States. Our Carol Costello, she's here. Good to see you again, Carol, with a talk back question. You know, I mean, you can't help it. You see what happened in Japan, you think, could this happen here in this country?
That's right. It's only natural, Suzanne. Images of what happened after Chernobyl, after 3 Mile Island, they are vivid again because of what's happening in Japan. Let's face it. When you hear possible nuclear meltdown, mass evacuations, and iodine tablets, it scares you. Maybe it's because we have 104 nuclear plants in this country, 23 of them designed just like the damaged plants in Japan. And you can't help but ask, could it happen here? Democratic Congressman Edward Markey is asking that very question. He's calling for a moratorium on new nuclear reactors in seismically active areas in light of the events in Japan.
We just have to call a timeout and examine whether or not those safety features, which are going to be necessary in the future, are built into new nuclear power plants in our country.
But Republican Senator Mitch McConnell disagrees. He says we shouldn't make domestic policy decisions right after a major environmental disaster, like the Obama administration's restrictions on drilling after the BP oil spill. With gas nearing $4 a gallon, Republicans are still needling the president on that one. Before we get too political, talk back. Should the United States hold off on new construction of nuclear plants? Facebook.com/CarolCNN, Facebook.com/CarolCNN, and I'll read some of your comments later in the hour.
There are going to be a ton. I mean, a lot of people are going to weigh in on this. Everybody has
especially people
a
living
nuclear
around
plant
those
in their backyard, and they say, you know, could that happen here? They want to know.
They do. So I'll be interested to hear what people have to say. CNN.com/Carol. What did I say? Facebook.com/CarolCNN.
I'm going to make sure they go to the right place.
Thanks,
All right,
Suzanne.
thanks, Carol. Here's what's ahead on the rundown. Thousands who lost their homes in the tsunami living on gymnasium floors. We're going to have a live report. We're also going to hear from an American woman whose husband was working in Japan at a nuclear power plant when the tsunami hit. And also, Japan's stock index falls, how it affects U.S. investors, plus how exposure to even small amounts of radiation can affect people. And amazing stories of survival as well.
Someone shouts, "There is still another person." They ask self-defense force troops to help.